Hello and welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Modesta Mahiga, and I wanted to start today's episode differently. 360 leadership is all about understanding that you exist in a context that's beyond your personal, professional. There are elements, and we've actually listed 10 elements that comprise who you are. And if any one of those are lopsided, then you won't be able to thrive as a leader. And so on the podcast, we remind leaders you can only lead others as well as you lead yourself. And today's guest will speak to us on leadership and wellness. And I believe she's going to go into I think she's going to take a broader definition of wellness and broader definition of leadership. So I'm really looking forward to having her speak with us. If you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast, share it with other leaders, and please leave us a review. Send a voice note on operations@modestamahiga.com to let us know what you've learned. Let us know what you've enjoyed and what else you'd like to hear. Now, to tell you a little bit about our guest. Our guest today is Phumla Motsa. She's a registered occupational therapist and the founder of Remote Ergonomics and MotsaHealth, 100% female Black-owned occupational therapy practice in Johannesburg, South Africa. With more than 15 years of consulting experience, Phumla has helped small and large South African companies and employees struggling with productivity and non-performance due to an illness or injury to optimize their contribution at work. Her passion lies in improving the lives of ordinary people and supporting them to return to a sustainable, productive life. She supports organizations with functional capacity evaluations to determine whether an employee, following an injury or illness, can perform their work tasks, case management, providing for a smooth return to work for employees that have been off work for some time, ergonomics workstation assessments and home office ergonomic workstation setup, as well as speaking and training on the fact that according to the WHO, musculoskeletal conditions are the leading contributors to disability worldwide, with low back pain being the single leading case of disability in 160 countries. Wow, I did not know that until I read her bio. Phumla is also an associate at WorkLink and an Assisa Academy trainer. She'll tell us a little bit more about that later. Before starting her own business, Phumla consulted for Alexander Forbes Consultants and Actuaries Limited, a global financial services company that specializes in insurance, health, retirement, life, and other wealth and assets solutions. Phumla holds a Bachelor of Science in Occupational Therapy from the University of the Witwatersrand, WITS, a diploma in vocational rehabilitation from the University of Pretoria, and a diploma in health economics from the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And just before we got on, Phumla was talking about, I've been talking about doing another program and I'm about to get to it. So I've just told Phumla, to the entire world now, they're expecting Phumla to come back and let us know how she did in that program. Phumla, welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much, Modesta. I'm so proud of the Witwatersrand. Love
Come
it.
On. Thank you so much. I've really been looking forward to this session with you, Phumla. I know I've known you for many years, and I know this topic, you can really do this topic justice. So just so that we're on the same page, why is wellness, Phumla, so important for leaders in particular? Leaders in particular.
I think that the reason it's important and why leaders should prioritize their wellness is not only to enhance their own performance, because as a leader, if you're prioritizing this, it's going to help you, but it also will create a positive ripple effect throughout the organization. And we've all heard about culture and leadership, and part of that is fostering a culture and an environment that allows people to show up to work as the best versions of themselves, for their families and for the organization. So the thing I really, really love about wellness is that it focuses on what we term like a biopsychosocial model. So yes, we look at the biology, we want you make sure that that aspect is done and that you're free from disease. But we're also looking at it from a psychological point of view and a social aspect, so that we're making sure that our environments are creating, like, healthy behaviors that enable both the work and personal life. And I think for me, the really key thing here is you showing up as the best version of yourself for your family and showing up for the best version of yourself for your work people. But first family and then work.
That is so good. I had no, I mean, I understood the implications of wellness, right? And a leader's wellness, both in that they will be able to lead better, but also because then they're the example, or then, they're probably more likely to make sure that the culture and maybe policy moves in that direction. But I had never really thought that there's a bio and psychosocial aspect to wellness. And there's actually a school of thought or learning that focuses on the social aspect of wellness. But just so that, we understand, what we're talking about in wellness, what do we mean when we use the term wellness? Because I feel like the past 2 decades, we've really been throwing it around. And I just wonder, being, a scientist and a person who's in the biosciences, what is wellness?
So, the WHO really looks at health overall as a state of like complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So that's that's the definition we've all memorized as healthcare practitioners, and that's really what we look at from a wellness. So it's not just the fact that I am not sick; it is also looking at your whole well-being. And for me, that is system orientated. For me, that is, when someone comes into my rooms as an occupational therapist, I will see countless people who come into my rooms, and my sole purpose when someone comes into my room in my field as a vocational therapist is to look at your person, to look at your environment, and then to look at your organization. And when I'm looking at those 3 different aspects, I'm trying to determine, is there any area that there's a deficit, that there's a limitation that we can then address to make sure that you are complete in your physical, in your mental, in your social well-being as you are a person interacting in an environment and potentially within an organization. So it's to look at all the different areas that affect our being. And this can include your role at home as a breadwinner, as a mom, as a dad, as a partner, as a sister, as a brother. That is important for your well-being. That can include aspects like your finances. How are you managing that? Do you have any stresses around that? How can we mitigate that or ring fence it so that it doesn't cause undue harm to your physical, mental, or social well-being? And then we can move on to your work environment. Okay, so what's your relationship like with your manager? How much control do you feel that you have, in your workplace? And, as I was thinking about this, in the wellness world, we kind of came across, Beyonce's Break My Soul video and her lyrics. And when you break down some of her lyrics, it's like, I quit my job because I need to find new drive. When we look at wellness, we're actually looking also at motivation, because everyone has a certain level of motivation, but where is it directed towards? Where is that energy moving towards when we're looking at your whole being? And part of the whole emphasis on wellness is just that state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And the thing is that it's unique to you. My definition and my systems might not work for you, Modesta, and they might not work for Mhando. They might not work for anyone else, but for you. And so, as an individual, we need to identify what is it for you. What is your drive? What is the thing that you need to turn up as the best version of yourself to the world?
This is so incredible. It is so incredible, and this is where. I heard you, when you were responding to the first question, when you said, okay, first your personal and your family, then your organization. And you're saying that we need to have a systemic outlook, because now culturally, you and I both African, culturally, people are like, I have no sickness, like there's absence of disease, I'm good, right? Like no one's diagnosed me with anything. Nothing is failing. No malaria. No whatever else. But you're saying, your wellness and your health is, yes, it's physiological, it's biological, but it's sorry, physiological, mental, social, and all of these are related and they interplay. Now, bring it to leadership, to help you thrive as a leader, right? To drive your leadership effectiveness of self and others. It was amazing that you mentioned finances. Like, if you're stressed with finances, that's going to end up showing up in your wellness. That's going to affect how you are at home and at work. And if you're stressed at work, equally so, it's going to affect you in other areas of your life. So I wonder how many leaders and I guess culture, like, I mean, socialization, right? What we're used to growing up. I wonder how many of us have that view. And I want to ask this question, and I hadn't really thought about this before, but is this a view that is accepted in most of the workplaces that you have worked with? That it's a systemic approach, it's a personal, it's a family, it's the organizational?
Yes, I think if you look at most employee assistance programs, they would be structured in this way. So most EAP providers, and they vary in what they maybe focus on or what they highlight, but you will always have, or you'll often have counselors. Now they're there to help you with any stresses you might have. They have a financial wing to that. So if you have any challenges, then you call the call center and you can talk about your finances. They also have medicals that they will do. What are the medicals there for? To do health risk management. So to identify any markers that could potentially become something bigger, whether it's blood pressure, diabetes, glucose levels, to check for diabetes. But all of that is to preempt any other chronic conditions. And most chronic conditions come from lifestyle, right? And so we want to look at all the different areas as wellness providers to make sure that we are addressing all the potential hazards that may come across. And most wellness providers will be positioned or will market their positioning as preventative. So we want to prevent someone being, going into financial distress. We want to prevent someone from developing a psychological disorder. We want to prevent the CEO from having a heart attack. So all the interventions look at the biopsychosocial aspect, and the different products will be positioned for your organization or for you as your leader, depending on what you're looking for, depending on what you want. And I mean, there's some great resources out there, and I've seen in the market that there's some trailblazers, that people coming up with really different concepts around wellness. And I think for leaders, it's really just to see what fits with you and what fits with your organization. If you are going to go that route of potentially outsourcing wellness. But if you are a solopreneur like myself, and you're just yourself, and you maybe have consultants, also that you need to take care of yourself very, very much. Like the importance of creating a system as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, is so important for the well-being of your company, for your financial, for your wealth planning, for your goal setting. And I know that you cover that always, Modesta, in your 360 leadership. And I mean, even way back in the day when you did the purpose and master plan, those are things that we spoke about, because you need to manage your energy. You need to know what your goals are. You need to do all of these aspects that even companies do from a wellness point of view, but you need to then do them for yourself, almost like by yourself, because you are a company in its entirety. Like, you're the sales, you're the marketing, you're the operations, you are Isla. So I just feel like the mandate on us is even greater, because you have so many different hats that you need to put on, and you cannot do it without a system or some sort of plan.
Oh, Phumla, this podcast episode will not be enough. You're coming back, because, you've just in a way, if there's anybody on the fence, so everyone's saying, nobody can afford, you don't understand being a C-suite executive, you don't understand the pressures, you don't understand, like nobody can really afford, this is a nice to have. No one can afford to take that kind of time. Nobody can afford to sit in a lotus position going, no, people think like, you're making too much of this, but you're saying, right now, I mean, especially when you said, there are really innovative and competitive products out there, you're saying the narrative is changing. People truly see the importance of this, okay, to personal wellness and well-being, to the organizational and cultural well-being, but to the bottom line as well, right? For an organization. And I want to I want to ask something, because with the 360 Leadership Podcast, what we're saying is, you exist in this 360 reality, and you can only lead others as well as you lead yourself, right? And you touch on that right now. And so the 10 aspects of the 360 leader is spiritual, right? Mental, emotional, your physical health, your personal development, your relationships, your finances, your professional development, your leadership, impact, and community around you, and ultimately legacy, like your aspirational, existential reason for being. Like, you want to know that you exist, you came here, you matter, and it's going to matter to the world that you existed. Is there a similarity in are these areas in any way resonating with you, that they are increasingly so, organizations being mindful of their employees' wellness across this spectrum?
I think so. And, I think that our time at home, because of a certain disease that we won't say out loud, really brought the choice and the autonomy back to the employee. And for a long time, we were reading stats, especially, us in the hybrid work model kind of field and in the wellness model, trying to answer the question to organizations who were saying, well, if I don't physically see the employee, how do I know that the person is working, right? Mm-hmm. And then that brought in okay, so you want to see the person. What does your performance appraisal look like? How are you measuring whether someone is working or not? Mm. Do you have to physically see them, or is it outcome based? Mm. So those were the initial questions. And then it was like, well, we need to have some sort of video, or we need to check the keys. Are they typing, so that we know that they're actually working? But then the question went back to, what is the outcome? What is the function that you want this person to do, rather than their day-to-day you seeing them there. And I think that really helped to take the layers off our lives, and it really helped us from a wellness point of view to go more into people's homes, but also to see how can we then support the whole transition between working from home, picking children up, dropping them off, doing Zoom calls until late in the night. So those conversations started being something that we have quite openly. And, and for me, sitting now in the kind of the bio side of it, of illness and injury, it's a much easier conversation now to have with employers and say, Miss So-and-so has a back injury. She struggles to travel to work. For her to be able to do the outcomes, right? Because now we're looking at function. My recommendation is that you set her up ergonomically in her home office. Let's get her the right techniques, and then let's measure her outcome while she's in a safe, protective environment. So now Miss X has the autonomy and the choice in terms of when she can stand, when she can sit, how she manages the niggling pain behind her. But she also knows that this is the outcome. But the constraints now and the kind of the measuring stick has moved from, I can see you in the office, you're physically typing, even though the person might be in excruciating pain and not getting the outcome that they require. But how do we incorporate the different aspects of our lives? Again, going back to the biopsychosocial model, so that we get the performance outcomes we want, but we still allow people the autonomy. And I think that the wellness lid has kind of been blown off, because we can have these conversations. What are the outcomes you want as a leader? What are the outcomes you want in terms of your employees? Okay, great. These are the outcomes. Now, there are 3 million ways we can get that outcome, not just one.
That is so good. And in a way now, we've moved from talking about the leader themselves and how wellness is important to the leader, right? Both for their personal wellness and 360 wellness, or as you say, psychosocial wellness, to the leader then representing that or championing that. It seems to me then leaders have to adapt now that we're more conscious and there's policy and there are programs in place to support wellness and total life wellness, right? To support a person so that they can thrive at work, but that means that they also have to get into their personal life. How are leaders being supported to adapt, to not look for keyboard strokes or whether a person is physically there, or maybe you can answer it better. How would you recommend then a leader supports their teams and organizations in this awakening to how important wellness is to people thrive?
I think it, for me, it kind of falls back to your area of expertise, just in terms of HR, in terms of hiring, in terms of the team that you create, in terms of key characteristics that you look out for when you're hiring people, in terms of critical actions that people must do in order for you to meet your goals. And I think if we simplify it in that, then it answers the question easily, because for big organizations, to answer your question in terms of how we support managers, the friction has come in. Department A is able to do hybrid or work from home. Department B cannot. And having the conversations in terms of what are our critical actions, what are my critical actions as an employee in this organization, what are my critical actions as a leader in the organization, and where best can I do that, and how best can I do that? Because if we understand that kind of fundamental positioning, then I feel like everything else we're able to kind of position it around it. I mean, I'll give you an example. If you are in I've got one client who is computer based. The work ethic and the work culture around them is turn up, put your camera on in the mornings. We're going to do a Zoom check-in, and then these are the outcomes we want. Everyone understands what is required. They're more able to work in a home office environment. Company B is more call center situated. If there's no power, if someone doesn't get it, we can't get our work done. Our critical action is that you need to make X number of calls, so you have to come into the office. But do you see that the conversations are slightly different? I'm still making sure that I'm getting buy-in and I'm giving the autonomy of the person, but I can still focus on wellness and support in those two situations and in those scenarios. So, which is why I say if you've got a small organization, you want to partner with the right wellness company who can come and meet your specific needs. Because if you are a restaurant or you are a computer-based company, those are two different conversations. And your provider needs to be able to whittle it down and be able to see how do we support your employees. And you also have people who are frequently off work for various reasons. And we can't ignore that. We can't ignore Joe, who has a sick note on Monday, has a funeral on Tuesday, and has something else on Wednesday. And these patterns also impact on the wellness programs we try and put in place, because line managers then kick back and say, yes, but you're saying all these things and I must support the employee, but they're not turning up on point A and point B and point C. I'm Monday, I've got a meeting with an employer where this lady was referred to me because of frequent absence. And now the wellness team is coming and saying, but she's got a sickness. So that the bio aspect has been impacted, and we can medically show that. But the psycho and the social part, the manager is not aware of. All the manager can see is that this person doesn't come and is sick often. So now my role is to come and say, yes, we do have the bio aspect that has been impacted, but how do we then support the employee overall, which in this case is going to be more, pain management and maybe some engineering around where she sits, in order for her holistically to have that well-being that we're going after. So there are definitely global things you can put in place, cultural things that you can put in place that will impact everyone. But there are those cases and those scenarios where you kind of need to do it from an individual point of view.
This is so good. And what I'm hearing is that even when there is policy and there is a program in place, there will be this case by case basis that you'll have to review and really invest in creating a tailored solution. But I can see the tension that, between management and maybe whether it's the wellness or it's HR saying, okay, and I can almost sometimes imagine the dismissive attitude that, look, we're petting these people so much. They're not even showing up to work. It looks like now, working is the exception, rather than the rule. We're making so many exceptions that, things aren't moving around here. Phumla, you were talking about, well, this is why it's important to have the right kind of support. So I read out your bio earlier, and you're an occupational therapist, and you've distinguished yourself in workplace ergonomics. But when you're speaking right now, you're speaking beyond, I think, my understanding of ergonomics, right? Your solution isn't just about if somebody is maybe physically incapacitated, right? Even this meeting you're about to have. Could you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do? Because I think you are one of the professionals you were just referring to that organizations can come to when they're looking to develop their wellness programs. They're looking to support a person who's injured or who is ill to continue contributing and for the organization to still meet its outcomes. So what exactly is occupational therapy and ergonomics, and what kind of services do you offer?
Well, we were joking the other day that occupational therapy is the best kept secret away from businesses, which is something we really need to work on. Because, we work in hospitals, we work in schools, and at least in the South African market, we work a lot with insurance companies, and we are now also moving into the employer space. And the reason why is because our training looks at each and every individual in terms of activity, in terms of what they are doing. So work is an important aspect that, that you will engage in as an employee or as an employer. That's what you're doing. You're working. And underlying your working ability or your working capacity is I'm going to say it again, the biopsychosocial aspect, right? So we're trained to assess a person holistically, identify any limitations, identify any deficits, and then see how we can compensate for that. How can we uplift that person so that they're meeting the productivity requirements overall? So we work very closely with physiotherapists, if it's something to do with their body mechanics and bios. We work very closely with psychologists if there's a mental illness and condition, so that we can address it and focus on it. We work very well with doctors if there's some internal aspects that need to be adjusted and changed. But our skill set is being able to take a step back and look at a person overall and see how their overall presentation is impacting on their work productivity and their ability to meet those critical actions and those outcomes that an employer wants. So often, like with the meeting I'm having on Monday, I've already met with the employee. So I understand what her concerns are, I understand what her challenges are. I understand where she is falling short and where she is saying, Phumla, my back is sore. Whenever I try and work, I need to sit, I need to stand. This is painful. I try and do this, and then this happens. And then now I'm meeting with the manager, and I'm saying, and I need to say to them, listen, there are definitely some limitations, but the contract does say that Miss X is expected to A, B, and C. How do we mitigate those risks and still get them to do their outcomes while following our legislation and the requirements around employment equity? And how do we make sure that we are still following the wellness principles that will enable employee A to perform well at work, but also to be fulfilled in their own home life, social life as an individual within an organization. So in a nutshell, it's really looking at a person, at their environment and their organization. So all occupational therapists are trained in that way. And we really are positioned to be able to pick up where the challenge is and then get the right support for productivity and for wellness.
You truly are the best kept secret away from business. I mean, truly, what it is you do. Like, we zoom out, we'll look at the bigger picture, and we'll look at how to get your holistic support, right? And make sure that, and we're speaking both to the employee and, management. I hear saying line management, and I'm sure you also have to speak, higher up to decision makers. So, Phumla, do you only work in South Africa? Because at this point, if somebody's hearing you, they're like, what did you say her name was? Where can she be found? Do you only work in South Africa? Because I know it's a highly regulated area. Please explain to us, because I think people might want to reach out to you.
I think people are welcome to reach out to us. So, I work mainly in South Africa, but I have clients who maybe are South African based, but are from different countries. So I have consulted outside of South Africa to assist in different programs and processes.
So good. And how do they reach you?
So email, easiest, phumla@motsahealth.com, or I'm on LinkedIn. If you put in my name and my surname, you should find a feed for me. And my Instagram handle is remote_ergonomics.
That is so good. And I'm going to make sure that we have these in the episode description as well. I want to ask one more question related to what you do, and then I'll switch gears a little bit because we really need tips from you before you go. I mean, we cannot have somebody of your caliber and then let you go just like that. So thank you for the free consultation. We're going to make sure that this podcast goes far and wide, and hopefully you'll get clients and visits from that. You posted a couple of, I don't know if days ago, I don't recall, but, I saw it, when you're just going through feeds and you saw, I saw an article that you reposted about like sitting for a long time being a silent killer. I have an Apple Watch, so it tells me it's time to stand up, and it's trying to close my rings and motivate me. Please, first of all, just that sentence, because that picture was scary, because it had like the death looming over people, over their workstations. But tell us what the perils are with sitting for a long time, and then what tips can you share with us to stay healthy? Because most of our work is pretty sedentary.
So that's a great question. I think that the three things that we learn in ergonomics is engineering, which is the first point of call. So you want to make sure that when you are sitting, you're not loading any of your muscles in an imbalanced way and in a way that is too much for that part of your body. So the spinal health is of utmost importance, and where you're sitting and where your shoulders and where your elbows are in relation to your desk and your chair are important. And there are many resources online. I mean, you can just Google and you can see a picture of what it's supposed to look like. I'm launching an ergonomic online store next week, where we're going to take you through an assessment process. So you can get a link, you go online, you assess your environment, it spits out a report, and it tells you the red areas that you need to work on and the green areas where you're doing well. And then from there, you can start adjusting your workstation. So the first key thing is the engineering. Where is everything positioned? The second thing they teach us in ergonomics is administrative. So as an OT, what I call this is like functional tasks. So if I know that I have a meeting and I need to be sitting at my desk, I'm going to use my optimal seating positioning. But if I know that I'm going to be on a call for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, then I'm going to stand, and I'm going to rather walk while I'm on that call than sit. if I know that I've got some light work, I can even move locations to a different part of my house or to a coffee shop or to a standing position, so that transitioning and changing is what my body is experiencing, because you don't want to load an area for an extended period of time. So how long and the duration that you sit for, or that you are in an abnormal position, is key. Because it's the loading, and then it's the amount of pressure that you're putting at that point. So we also look at something we call micro breaks. So my biggest thing is drink lots of water, because it's going to make you go up to the bathroom, and simply by standing and moving, you are already changing positions, and that's a key thing. The third thing they teach us in ergonomics, which is the least effective as human beings, is behavior, because we really struggle to change our patterns and our habits. So that means that I can seat you in an optimal chair and a desk, but if you choose to cross your legs, or you decide not to kind of meet the requirements in terms of what I've said, then it falls short. So that's why we really do focus on how you're sitting. And it doesn't, most of the times when I speak to managers, they're like, oh, we need to buy an expensive chair. No, often you will already have an ergonomic chair. We're just looking at you adjusting it based on a person, because the chairs have adjustability, or should have adjustability. Us as human beings are different. We've got different heights, we've got different weights. And so as an ergonomics consultant, all I'm doing is I'm showing you how to adjust based on where you're sitting and what you are doing. So I think a key tip that people often will enjoy is just realizing that you need to change positions, and you can stretch in between all of those. And we call those micro breaks. And they really help overall to make sure that your spinal health is optimally placed.
This is so good. Phumla, the link to the online store and where we can get the assessment of where we need to improve, right? And where we're doing well. We're going to ask for that as well. So as soon as that is up, we'll make sure to add it to this episode as well. And I love what you were saying. The engineering, the administrative, the micro breaks, the behavior, this has to be a system. And I have known you for a very long time. And I know you're a disciplined person, and you follow through. Just as a person, you follow through on what you set out to do. But I've also known you to be a person who believes 100% in systems, right? Like, put a system in place. Don't wait for your own motivation, your willpower, your mood to align for you to do the right thing and to do it consistently. I now would like to just ask you questions as Phumla, and I hope that by getting to know a little bit more of how you help yourself succeed, that we can get some tips as well on how we can do on our end. So I've known you to be conscious. I've known Phumla. Listen, people, I've known Phumla for over 3 decades. Okay, so when I say I've known, because we can throw I've known out there, but over 3 decades. So when I say I've known her to be what I'm about to describe her as, understand I know her, to be a person who is mindful of what you put in your body and maintains a healthy lifestyle. How did you develop that?
I blame my mom, because she's always been such a stickler of what we eat and what we do. And she actually has a YouTube clip out from the church where she talks about healthy eating. So she's always been very clear on nutrition and how important it is, and making sure that for me personally, that I'm eating well. Mm-hmm. And as a child, that meant there was no chocolate, there were no sweeties, there was no yummy stuff in the house. And I think that's the first system. Having a limited number of yummy things. And now I am not saying that people shouldn't eat yummy things, but it's just in moderation. And so I would often eat those outside of the home if we're out and we're doing things, but it wasn't I can go to this cupboard and get. And families are different, but that was how I was raised. And then I think also just understanding the importance of exercise, but finding the right exercise for you. There's an OT that I follow, Dr. Lombard, and she does sensory integration for adults. And when you go through her profiling, and we can also maybe put it on the show notes because she has a free test that you can do. It tells you what your bent is in general from a sensory input point of view. And I believe that how you interact with the world is also how you can best exercise, because of the joints, your positioning, your smells, what you like. So also finding exercise that works for you personally is important. And then personally also just spending time reading, journaling is just part of my routine in the mornings. And I think that just really helps me to turn up for my work as best as I can. And, and we know about batching, making sure that you're doing the same thing at least for 3 or 4 hours.
We don't know about batching, Phumla. We don't know. What is
so this multitasking situation is a myth that your brain can go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. So there've been a few studies that have been done to show that you actually lose a lot out of your day when you change things. So if, for example, you know that you are wanting to send out content, you want to do your content creation, instead of trying to find 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there and 3 minutes there, you want to block out 2 or 3 hours and focus on that. Because if you focus on the one thing, your brain is able to go further than if you are changing and chopping stuff. So generally my mornings are blocked out for hard work, for difficult work, because I just work better that way. I have another friend who her afternoons are blocked out for that. So again, it's about knowing your preferences and knowing what works for you. And then for me, my afternoons are generally more for meetings and interactions. I try and sleep at the same time every day. I cannot tell you how important sleep is. And there's another occupational therapist by the name of Tanya Muir. I think it's Muir, it's Muir, and she does a whole sleep training focused aspect for mental health. So if you've got mental health or mental illness challenges, sometimes we can actually trace it back to the quality of your sleep. So there are definitely techniques around that. And so it's understanding at the beginning of the day, looking and thinking, how do I want this day to end? How do I want to feel at the end of the day? And then putting the systems in place and understanding that you have to say no. Sometimes you have to say no to things, because by saying no to one thing, you're saying yes to something else. And it's the planning and prioritizing. And for me, the biggest game changer has been sitting the night before, writing down exactly what I plan to do the next day. And it doesn't mean that it's going to happen exactly like that, but at least if something interrupts me, I know what I was supposed to do, and it's easier to go back to that. And also, you don't want to be making decisions. There's the whole your brain having to make decisions every 5, 10, 15 minutes also interrupts the flow of how your brain works. So you want to set it out in terms of, this is what my plan is, so that you can go from one thing to the next without having to decide. I mean, we all have heard how Steve Jobs wore the same colors and the same type of pants, every day. That wasn't from a lack of finances to change colors. It was just that he wanted his decision making to be focused towards his brand and his product. And I think that we can implement some of those things in order to help us to work as a system, to work in minimizing our energy expenditure on things that won't give us the results that we want. I've said a lot, but I really enjoy it.
I love it. And you've shared, because I was going to ask, you're a super busy person. So how, what kind of system do you have in place? Because I also know you're a person who likes to put in systems. And I've heard you share, your system from, morning to evening. I love that. Started with the end in mind, right? Like, how do I want to feel? What do I want my day to be like, at the end of the day? How do I want to feel at the end of my day? And I've heard you speak about, work and productivity. I wanted also to hear about, because you're in context and relationships. So how do you prioritize your, 360, your biopsychosocial health, right? so that you're not consumed by taking care of other people and things at the expense of your health and wellness. One thing I remember, Phumla, is you talking about the toll of some of the cases and what people have been through. And this is not just I injured my back, but traumas and assaults and what that could have when that is your work. You daily meet with people and you're hearing these things. So how, what kind of systems do you put in place? What do you do now in I guess the psychosocial aspect of and relationship aspect of your life to still prioritize your wellness and not get consumed?
So I think that, I don't always get it right, but, the boys, and my fiance knows 3 days in the week, I'm at gym from 6 to 7. What I do in that time is manage my stress. I pray. I really focus on what I want my week to look like. And that time also helps me to deal with any, any trauma, any things that I've heard of had to deal with from a work point of view. Other people, especially in acute settings, will go for therapy. And so as part of my, based on my healing and my own traumas, I go for 4 sessions a year, like non-negotiable, at least for a year. Sometimes it's more, but I have standing sessions with the qualified registered psychologist that I can debrief with and just make sure that I am dealing with anything that comes up. And also from a spiritual point of view, because even in the medical field, when we are assessing, we also include spirituality, because if I'm assessing someone and they're dealing with something painful or hurtful, I need to know what do you believe in? Who do you believe in? How do you deal with that trauma that has happened? And that helps us also from a therapeutic point of view to get to help the person identify the tools that they need to be able to work through different aspects that are coming through to them. So I think it's really about being mindful and purposeful about what you need, and also having those moments of silence by yourself, for yourself, because that's the only time that you're going to know what works for you as an individual, for your wellness. And also being gentle and kind to yourself. Like sometimes you just have a bad day, and sometimes you just don't get the results that you are hoping for. That's okay. It's also understanding that not every day is going to be the same, but you also just basically fall back to whatever system you have. And I cannot also not say speaking life into your day, into your work, will make a difference in getting you to the level that you need to be in. I mean, I was at gym the other day, and I've just started boxing. Nice. And I said, I had so much fun. And I said to this girl who's like, the ones that do like 50 push-ups, and they're like, you're still on your 10th one, and she's already on her 50th one. Yeah. And I was like, how do you do it? And how do you work through winter? Because we're about to get into winter here in South Africa. And she looked at me and she said, I enjoy the after effect of my exercise, not waking up in the dark, not coming here, but I like how it makes me feel afterwards. And I thought, that's such a good way of framing this whole thing. I could sit now and be like, oh, it's going to be dark, I'm not going to want to go. Or I can say, I'm going to focus on how I want to feel afterwards. Okay. And I think it's just, it's really about what works for you. What aspects do you need? And I want to go back to the sensory profiling. I want to go back to you as an individual. I want to go back to your sleeping patterns, because if we can get the keystone things right, and I think sleep and exercise is one of those, then the other things also come.
That is so good, Phumla. So first of all, honestly, for a person who's listening in, just acknowledging that you exist in a 360 reality, or as Phumla puts it, the biopsychosocial wellness. You exist in a reality that every area of your life impacts every other. Right. So just that acceptance. Don't dismiss it. Don't just say, oh, it just sounds very hoo-ha, new agey. No, this is the reality. And how you are individually affects how you are at home, how you are at work, which is probably where you spend most of your waking hours. Understanding your shape, your bend, understanding your preferences, understanding your makeup, then so that you can find the resources that work for you, and then putting a system in place, as Phumla said. So, if there's a leader listening now and they're thinking, okay, I've always heard and known that wellness should be a priority, but just haven't been able to build it into my busy work and life. I feel like you just told them, right? You just gave them what they need to start. First of all, to accept that they won't go so far as a leader if they're not going to take care of themselves, 360 holistically. To learn more, and this is why I really kept on asking you. So, tell us more about what you do. Where can we find you? This may be the first time people heard in a few minutes a summary of what it means to truly be healthy and how they can go about it. Is there anything else that you would like to share with them about starting their journey? Phumla, you also talked about, 4 non-negotiable counseling sessions with a registered psychologist. You said every year, I may have more, but I have 4 that I must take every year to go through anything. And I know you've been through life transitions, and a pretty traumatic life transitions. When you're talking about, where they could start, I wonder if you could talk about just the permission I think sometimes leaders need to give themselves to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think it's that understanding that when you're on a plane, the air hostess tells you to put the oxygen over your own nose and mouth before you put it on your child or before you help anyone else. And it's understanding that as a mom, you need to be fully healthy yourself before you can turn up for your children. It's understanding that as a leader, you need to be happy. You need to be satisfied. You need to be feeling grateful and motivated and energetic about whatever it is you're expecting your team to do. And the only way you can do that is if you sit and you are true to yourself in terms of where your life is, what is hard, what do you need to work on, and to give yourself grace, like it's okay. It's okay. Wherever you are, it is okay. But the question is, where do you want to be? And then how are you going to get there? And I know, I sometimes get kickback with my friends. They're like, yeah, so you go to a psychologist. We don't need that, blah, blah, blah. They often will say that. And I'll say, well, find something that also works for you. Because you can have a coach, you can have a career coach, you can have a leadership coach, you can have an executive coach, like your work, Modesta. I mean, you helped me immensely just to be able to understand where my career and where my work can be, because you do need someone who can say, okay, well, you're here. Let's see how we can help you. But where do you want to go? And I think hope is what keeps us humans going. Even in terrible, awful, distressing situations, hope is what keeps us going. And I think that, especially in the coaching world, I think you are very beautifully positioned to help people understand and see where their limitations are, and then still feel empowered to be able to find the resources, find the help to be able to move forward in that.
Thank you so much for that. I love how you kept on saying, it's okay. It's okay. Leaders do not hear enough. It's okay. And because they don't hear that, and there is this pressure of the buck stops with me. I'm the final decision maker. If I don't have it all together, then everything will fall apart. To hear a professional, to hear a leader, to hear a person who's been in corporate for a large multinational, a person who's running their own business, a person who's supporting small and large organizations, who's supporting leaders individually and as the leader over others, to hear you say it's okay matters more than to hear it from somebody else. So thank you for telling us we can give, reminding us we can give ourselves permission and grace to really embrace our wellness and wellness as a priority for those that we lead. So as we're closing off, Phumla, is there anything else that you'd like to share? A word of advice to leaders on leadership and wellness?
I think the parting thing is to take care of yourself. I think that is just so important to be able to wake up in the morning, know what your plan is, know what you'd like to get done, and to be okay with the structure that is the person first. And then from there, then we move out into the environment and the organization that you impact. But it does start with you as a person. So I think the most important thing for me, which is an occupational therapy model, is to look at the person first, which is you as the leader, and then from there how you can impact others. But it has to start. It has to start with where you are as a leader.
Oh, Phumla, thank you so very much for taking the time to take us through what leadership and wellness can look like. And for sharing your professional insights, for sharing from your life and some of your systems and mindset and things that you put in place. It's very interesting. You've mentioned your fiance, you've mentioned your children, you've mentioned friends, you've mentioned family. You show that we do this in community. That just because you're the leader doesn't mean that you're isolated and you're on your own. You mentioned coaches, you mentioned working with me. And I think that really also makes the journey easier and makes the journey brings hope, like you said. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to make sure to share all your links where we can get in touch with you. You've mentioned 2 links for other OT practitioners that we can hear from, as well as when you're launching. By the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
For your online store next week. A link to that as well for people to do the assessments and then also to start purchasing the solutions that they need.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd enjoy that very much. I love helping people.
Thank you. Thank you, Phumla. I know you do. I know you do. Ladies and gentlemen of the 360 leadership community, what a rich and enriching episode. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Share it, leave a review. Want to leave us a voice note? You can reach us on operations@modestamahiga.com. And I wanted to share in this month of love, and Phumla has just reminded us of how important it is to start with ourselves. So this month of self-love, we have all our products and services, our coaching, our consulting, tools, online courses on sale. And you will see in the description the different links to access the discounts on the services. If you'd like to connect with me one-on-one, I've also shared a link for consultation. And each time I speak about the Global Executive Coaching Program, if you're thinking, Modesta, you talk about 360 leadership, work and life, and how all of these areas relate to each other. I'd like to go through a comprehensive program that helps me grow in my self-leadership, other leadership, organizational industry leadership. What could that look like? Reach out to us on operations@modestamahiga.com and we'll send you the brochure. Until the next episode, thank you so much for being part of our community. And remember, you can only lead others as well as you lead yourself. So start with you and other things will fall in place. Thank you.